feel that health care is not a right. Can you justify that?
I think very easily. I mean, you have a right to your life and you have a right to your liberty. You ought to have a right to keep what you earn in a free country. But you don't have a right to stuff. You don't have a right to services or things like a house or a job, because in order to get that, the government would have to take it from somebody else. If somebody claims you have a right to a car and they don't have one and the government gets them a car, they have to take the money or the car from somebody else. So it's a contradiction in terms. If somebody has a right to something, they have to violate somebody else's right. So the most you can expect in a free society is for government to make an attempt at protecting rights, not to try to redistribute wealth. If you do that, all people lose their rights.
Now, you have also said before that you believe that this bill will be repealed because it will drive the country into bankruptcy. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I'm not optimistic that it's all of a sudden going to get repealed. I think in economic terms it gets repealed because it won't function, because it'll drive us to bankruptcy and it won't be efficient. And finally, the people will have to change it or give up on it or just slip into some horrible situation because it's not viable. You can't create a program that's going to cost $1 trillion in the midst of an economy that's weak and our national debt's going up $2 trillion. It's just impossible to happen. And then they tell us that it won't cost anything, that we'll actually cut the deficit. But most Americans don't believe that. It's going to make health care more expensive, and it's not going to increase the quality at all. It'll cause a lot of rationing, and if the people are unhappy now, wait till they get this program and they'll be a lot more unhappy.
So you're saying as a result of this, a bigger economic crisis is coming?
Yeah, I think we're in the midst of one, and we've had some blips on some government statistics, but I don't think we have had the full correction that is necessary. And this will help to push the economy back down again in hopes that the economy corrects itself. But the government has done everything wrong. They've done everything that they did to get us into this mess. That is by spending too much, borrowing too much, regulating too much, and printing too much money. You can't get out of that problem by doing exactly the same thing. And this amplifies this. A bill like this just emphasizes that too many people in our government believe the government can solve these problems, and yet they're the ones who created the trouble.
So because of some of this legislation and also the economic situation in general, you have all these different grassroots movements really springing up, the Tea Partiers, libertarians. So as far as the GOP goes, is the GOP sort of splitting at the seams when you have all these other candidates vying for power? Who is really in charge of the GOP here?
Well, I don't know if any one person, but actually the GOP is more together now than they have been for a long time.
Really? How is that? When you have the neoconservatives, you have the Liberty candidates, you have the Tea Party. They seem not to agree with each other. So.
But you ended up having every congressman that's a Republican voted against this bill, plus some Democrats.
Good point.
And probably all the Republicans in the Senate will be voting against it. So yes, but I don't know whether that should be reassuring, because when Republicans are in opposition, they do a pretty good job of sticking together, challenging the incumbents. But unless they change their way, they will not restore confidence with the American people, because the people got frustrated 4 years ago and 2 years ago and said Republicans weren't doing a very good job because they were making government much bigger. So the big test now is can the Republicans get their credibility back? And right now they have a chance, but there's reason to be a little bit skeptical. I'm hoping to make sure the Republicans stick to what they're doing now and try to take a principled stand against the encroachment of big government.
So as long as they're all opposed to something, they can come together and make something happen or not happen.
And that's only halfway, because they should get together and propose the alternative, and that's what I've tried to do in the past, is offer something that would replace government programs, because there's lots of ways you can deliver services and goods other than through government mandates and government spending, because inevitably that fails.
Let's switch gears and focus on foreign policy for a second. When it comes to the war in Afghanistan, Congressman Dennis Kucinich recently introduced a privilege resolution that pretty much brought the debate over the war in Afghanistan to the House floor. And he said, look, it's not the president, it's Congress that's supposed to declare war, at least according to the Constitution. And in response to that, you wrote a very interesting article entitled "Supporting the War Instead of Supporting the Troops." Many would say that it's the opposite. If you support the troops, you're supporting the war. If you support the war, you're supporting the troops, right?
Yeah, I think people are confused on this, but I feel very good about the fact that so many military people support me, because I want to be very, very cautious about going to war, doing it very infrequently and deliberately, only when the Congress and the people endorse it and know why you're there and know what the end point is. So if you're in the military, which I was, I would have felt a lot better in the 1960s to have somebody that was more cautious about sending us around the world. And I think if you just support war, you don't support the troops. Otherwise, the troops would be elated with the other candidates who say, well, let's just spread the world war all around the world and let's bomb this country, bomb that country. The military, per se, they're not exactly enthralled with that type of a policy.
But why isn't Congress more assertive when it comes to matters of armed conflict, when it comes to matters of war, if the Constitution gives the U.S. Congress this power?
Well, they've reneged on their responsibilities. The prerogatives of the Congress have been virtually given up, whether it has to do with legislation. Now, if you can't get your legislation quite right, you ask the president to write an executive order. The administrative part of government, which is in the executive branch, write regulations all the time. But those are laws, and they shouldn't be doing that. And the Congress allows the courts to overrule when they could take back some of that jurisdiction. So Congress, in many ways, have been derelict. They don't want to assume responsibility. When this debate came up before Iraq, when I said, look, if you want to go to war, you should have a declaration, behind the scenes, what their argument was, no, if it goes badly, we'll just blame the president. You know, they don't want the responsibility of it. So Congress is, I think the founders would be astounded to see how much of responsibility the Congress has given up. They intended that Congress would be the most important body, but now it's probably the least important, and it's Congress's fault. It's also the people's fault, because they allow their Congress to go and start wars and run the welfare state and run up the deficits and print money and just not pay any attention to the Constitution. So we've been very, very careless in having people represent us that actually believed in what America was supposed to be in our Constitution.
And in the case of Afghanistan, it seems that 90 days has turned into almost a decade. When do you think it will end, and what is the ultimate goal for the United States over there?
Well, the goal is occupation and to control the oil and to control that region and be the world's policeman. But it's going to end when we go bankrupt, just as the Soviets ended their occupation. The Soviets ended for economic reasons. We didn't have to fight the Soviets. They had a lot of nuclear weapons, and they finally had to just close their tent, because the economic system wasn't viable. And our economic system isn't viable either. You can't run a welfare state and have these kind of deficits and regulations and controls and endless building of the empire. It will end, but I don't know when. It doesn't deserve to exist right now. So maybe next year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years from now, there will be a panic, and there'll be a panic out of there's a bond bubble right now. People, because of so much trouble in Europe, people are buying our bonds, and it boosts the dollar and makes America look good. It's just because they're a lot worse. But eventually, the markets will give up on our bonds. Interest rates will go up. They're starting to go up right now. When interest rates go up, then you invite back the inflation that the American people will then very much know that there's a bigger crisis going on.
You have also said, especially after the Christmas Day bomber incident, that you are very concerned about U.S. policy toward Yemen. Why is that?
Mainly because it's spreading the war needlessly. It reminds me of the 1960s as we were in Vietnam, and it went into over into Laos and these other countries, and it never helped us, just got us into more trouble. So yes, it's the legal aspect of our CIA secretly doing these bombings in a country like Yemen. It isn't even our military, it's the CIA that's doing this. And every time we kill somebody, they call them civilians or innocent people. They'd like to make us think that they're all criminals out to bomb New York City, which they're not. They're the Taliban who are trying to defend their country. And every time we kill one, a lot of time our military will celebrate. So, oh, we just killed 10, 15 people. But we've just created 10 or 15 more families that are bound to determine that they can do whatever they can to hurt us. So I don't like going out and looking for more enemies. So whether we're bombing Pakistan or bombing Yemen or occupying Afghanistan, occupying Iraq, token victories mean nothing, because long term it will be bankruptcy for us, and it'll be more hatred directed toward us.
Now, when we talk about foreign policy, especially right now, we can't forget about China. Lately, whether it has to do with politics or economics, there seems to be a deterioration in relations between the United States and China. What do you make of all this back and forth of these so-called spats between these two countries?
Our economy is weak, but a lot of that weakness is due to our own fault, but we'd like to blame somebody else, so we blame the Chinese. We blame them and say, well, they artificially fix their currency lower than the market would. It may be true, but we're fixing our currency all the time. We print a lot of it, and we keep our currency very, very weak, so it benefits us in trade. It's a matter of who's going to get blamed. That would be devastating economically for us to be in a trade war with China, because it's the lack of trade war, it's the breakdown of those trade barriers, and when we were fighting China, that was when we were in great danger. But since we've dropped that attitude and we've been trading with them and traveling back and forth, that's much better. But now we're drifting back into telling the Chinese what to do, and we're really not in the driver's seat. They're our banker, so we can't overly offend them, or it may backfire and hurt us. We should argue for sound money, market rates of interest, and free trade with anybody who wants to trade with us, and friendship with those who offer friendship.
Congressman Paul, as always, thanks for your analysis.
Thank you.